Hello, everyone. One more time with the Collusion Illusion debacle. The Mueller report came out with no indictments against Trump or anyone in his team or administration. Um, all the indictments that did come out came out in the past and had nothing to do with a Russian collusion, and no one should be terribly surprised by this. The problem with the aftermath, now that we've reached the conclusion of this report, is that we may find some things in there that are unsettling, but certainly nothing that is criminal. But the most important thing is that the level of trust that has been lost in the process, and not just uh, politically, because we expect politicians to do nasty things in order to get elected. There's nothing unusual about that. Um, it is appropriate in a way for campaigns to see what the others are doing, to find dirt and discredit them, so that you know the campaign can win. That's natural. What's unnatural is the amount of assistance by the CIA, the Justice Department, and the FBI to go through a legal process in what amounts to a potential coup of a duly elected president. This is perhaps the kinds of things we see in tyrannical regimes. It is inappropriate that in a country like ours, that values freedom and the rule of law, at least supposedly does, can allow such activities to happen at the highest levels of government. And when you don't have a media that will investigate these claims, that actually act on behalf of the Democratic Party, and there were some issues in the news about this happening with NBC News. We've really come to a part that a part in the road here where getting the truth is becoming more and more difficult. And when you have people in the highest levels of government covering up the truth for their own political aims, and some of those aims are uh, involve more government intrusion on our lives, an expansion of government, and a very the cynicism against someone like Trump, like him or not, has actually done a fairly good job exposing the kind of cronyism that goes on, not just with the Clinton campaign, uh, but within politics itself, within the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. There's a lot of coming out of where we see people making claims on one half. AOC is a good example of this, where she does use cars. She uses she flies from New York to D.C. Most of the time. She doesn't take the train. So when we get into these contradictions on people's personalities, and the way what they do and what they say are very different, um, is in a sense what the media should be pointing out on. And they never did their due diligence when it came to Russia collusion, that whole hoax that was put out. Instead, they defended it, and they defended it to the bitter end. And now their cable ratings have tanked at MSNBC and CNN. And conversely, Fox News has had their very significant rise in their ratings. So we now see where people are actually looking for the truth. And I'm sure a lot of Democrats are shaking their heads saying that, the Green New Deal is just a utopia that just cannot sustain itself in any kind of pragmatic way. And reasonable people will come up with reasonable ideas to fix things like climate change, which I happen to believe is a man-made and potentially catastrophic. problem. It will be, um, but the science has always said that the real catastrophes will happen much, in 100 years or more. Certainly not in a 12-year period. I don't know where. Um, I, I, I do know where it came from. It came from a report where the tipping point is in 12 years, not that the world will end in 12 years. So there's so much misinformation going on out there. And the Mueller report, it's astonishing that Democrats like Adam Schiff who's on chairs the Intelligence Committee, and his supporters in Congress can go on the air and defend um, the accusations against Trump as being legitimate. And what they're actually doing is they won't call the Steele dossier by name. They won't mention Fusion GPS, but they'll use those documents that have never been collaborated. And this is going back, a year and a half ago that we knew that they couldn't get any collaboration. There's suspicions that even Mueller himself was convinced that there was no case 18 months ago, and yet they're still making the claim that the documents in this dossier are actually legitimate, and they're making the case that prosecution should be made against Trump, his team, and the administration based on those unverifiable documents. It's all bogus. And there's one more thing I have to say about special counsels themselves. I think they really should be used in extreme circumstances. I really would prefer, um, because the special counsel has become this big monster in the room that no one has control of. No one uh, can. There's very little oversight. If we allow the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, to investigate these kinds of issues that come up, uh, such as the Russian collusion allegations, then they should take up the case and they should make a vow of impartiality and see where the evidence goes. And what's become a spectacle with these special prosecutions. I mean, we had the same problem during the Clinton years with the Starr investigation. It was a lot of bull. It was complete bull. And what was supposed to be, you know, one issue just came, at the very end became a matter of inappropriate sexual relationships. I mean, it just the whole thing is a mess. These special counsels are not have not been effective, and I think that we need to bring it back to the Justice Department to run these investigations, and there should be complete scrutiny among our, the congressional Congress to make sure that they are being charged with doing the duties that they're supposed to be investigating. Uh, there's a lot of people who say that now that this is done, parts of the redacted reports of the Mueller report will be made public. Um, I hope that somewhere in there we have some idea of who started this whole mess, and whether it was in the Obama administration, some of his officials, um, someone in any of the various departments that, whether it's Department of Justice, the FBI, or the CIA. But there's certainly a lot of accountability that has not been met um, with the kind of severity that should be met because of the lack of trust that the Americans have on their government. I like to see government work when it can. I like to see less government because I think that the smaller the government is, the less corruption it can impede on people's lives. And there's a lot of talk about how the Mueller report wrecked a lot of lives. I mean, some of these lives are wreckable in a way because um, there's a lot of corruption going on, and um, when you go back to falsifying your application on real estate transactions and all this other stuff, and it comes up 10 years later, and then you go to jail for that. I mean, normally that wouldn't have happened. It became apparent through the investigation. But I think what's the most important thing is that we have to be very. One of the things that we've lost in this country is we vote for a president, and the person we vote for lost. We had a kind of expectation in America that the will of people have been made through the legal process. Um, that includes the electoral college. I'm not gonna argue against that at all. It's appropriate that we have that system. But the problem is that we no longer accept the president. Um, and partially this was true even with Republicans with Obama, but certainly not to the extent it is with Trump. But to have the president succeed for the benefit of the country, that has been tragically lost. And it's been tragically lost because we have so many leftists that are gaining ground and making and grabbing a bullhorn and telling people how to think um, with vicious lies, statements that are not verifiable. And then the ultimate weapon is when you don't have an argument, you call someone a racist or a bigot, and all the way down the line. So that's the sad story of where we are with this Mueller report. It was a disaster from the beginning, and it is sobering at this point um, to see that we could actually have a political coup in the making. Um, Maybe it's still in its American form, but it's not quite like Venezuela or Russia, but it is disturbing. And to just whitewash it away like we do with Jesse Smollett and um, the kids in Covington High School is it just shows you how the extent that we're able to fabricate lies for political gains. This is something any American citizen should be wary of. I'll see you again next time.